everybody. I am back from Vancouver, and let me tell you what a trip it was. It was the most amazing trip. I just took them out. It's your turn. Um, and as you can see, I got a new dress. But if you want to see pictures of my trip, go to my TikTok account. That's where they will be pictures of my trip. So, anyways, without further ado, as promised, we're going to do 3 videos. This one is a scary clown animated story. So let's go. Let's get started. And I hate clowns, so.
There was a murder in my apartment building.
Ooh.
The deceased was a middle-aged man who lived in the penthouse. The killer had cut his mouth from ear to ear with a knife and nailed the corners of his mouth up to his temples.
Ugh.
The man was found dead with his eyes rolled back and a grotesque grin on his face.
Ugh.
The residents of the apartment lived in fear, and the investigation was slow as the murderer scene yielded no evidence of the killer. 3 days after the incident, the same video was sent simultaneously to the cell phones of all the residents of the apartment building from a mysterious number.
Okay.
The video showed a clown looking at the screen and giggling in an unnerving
I
manner,
hate clowns.
saying, "Smile, smile, smile." He then picked up the camera and showed us his surroundings, the penthouse of the man who died a few days earlier. The man was tied to a chair, crying out for help, and the clown pulled out a sharp knife and began to slice the man's mouth open. After slicing the screaming, struggling man's mouth from ear to ear, the clown held the corner of the man's mouth up, smiled for the camera, and then took out a hammer and began hammering nails into the corner of the mouth. The clown giggled as he spun around in the swivel chair to which the man was strapped with his mouth torn open and a wide grin on his face. Then the screen suddenly went black, and the words, "James, room 503 next," appeared in white letters on a dark background. My heart sank and I sat back in my seat. The fact that the clown knew my name and my home address gave me goosebumps. How did he know me, and why was I his next target? I hadn't done anything to earn someone's grudge. While I sat there in a panic, other residents who had seen the video called the police and officers came to my house. They asked me if I knew who the clown was, and I suddenly realized that the man next door in room 504 might be the culprit. I had been losing sleep over the past few nights due to a thumping noise coming from my neighbor. One night I went to bed before an important meeting the next day, and again I heard a thumping noise from my neighbors. So I went over to their house after midnight and rang the doorbell. "Who is it?" The suspicious-looking man next door opened the front door with a hanger, and through the narrow doorway I could see he was holding a hammer. I don't know what he was doing in the middle of the night, but that hammer seemed to be the source of the noise. "It's your neighbor. You're being too loud and I need to get some sleep," I said in an irritated tone to the man, who glared at me for a moment before slamming the front door. I told the police that I heard the man next door hammering every night, and had seen him with a hammer myself. So I suspected he was the culprit.
Of course.
The police listened to my story, and they said they would take a closer look at the man next door. When the police returned, I couldn't bear to stay in the apartment, so I took an extended leave of absence from work, packed up my things, and went down to the countryside to live with my parents. I stayed at my parents' house for about a month, and there were no more murders in the apartment because the police were keeping an eye on the man next door. With this lull, I returned to the apartment on my last day of vacation. I walked into the lobby of my apartment building and was greeted by the doorman with a big smile on his face. "You're back home. I'm so glad you're safe." "Yes, it's been a while." After a long drive, I was too tired to answer the man's friendly greeting. So I gave a rough answer and I waited for the elevator. He told me that he saw the man next door lurking in front of my door a few days ago, and that he's going to take me there because he thinks it might be dangerous. When we got to the 5th floor and the elevator doors opened, I saw my neighbor standing in front of my front door, smoking a cigarette. The man's eyes looked murderous, and I was terrified. So I asked the doorman to go inside the house with me. He and I walked past the neighbor in a tense moment. And suddenly the neighbor lunged at me from behind, grabbed me from the back of the head, and started dragging me into his house. "Help me!" I shouted, frightened. The doorman quickly picked up my suitcase and slammed it down on the man's head as hard as he could, and the man collapsed, bleeding on the spot.
Oh, that's good.
What do we do now? I think he's dead.
I asked him, breathing heavily. He looked surprised and broke out in a cold sweat.
I didn't think he would die. Isn't this considered self-defense? Let's get him inside the house before anyone sees him and think about it.
He and I picked up the fallen man.
He's
and
the
hurried
clown,
inside
isn't
the
he?
house.
I don't think anyone else has seen him yet.
He said, looking out the front door. Just then, the man next door, whom I thought was dead, struggled to raise his head and shouted,
Run!
Suddenly, the doorman pulled out a knife from his pocket and slashed the man's mouth wide with a single blow.
No!
The man screamed and died with one side of his mouth torn off. When I saw the scene, I was so stunned that my whole body went rigid. The doorman said,
Whew! That could have been really bad.
He breathed a sigh of relief and took off his jumper, revealing a colorful clown costume hidden inside. He smiled up at me, put on the clown mask, and said,
Hello, James, from room 503. You didn't smile when I smiled and greeted you in the lobby every day. The people who live here are so unkind. Anyone who doesn't respond back to my smile will keep smiling even after they die.
Oh, no. Well, that was just messed up. This is why I don't like clowns. Anyways, the next one is an Omegle story, so
This
let's
happened
go.
to me when I was 16. I'm from Cleveland,
Hang
but
on,
I
guys.
moved to a small village
Janice
in
Mona,
Illinois.
Chris Daily
It was about a
Review.
4-hour
Sorry.
drive from Chicago. I was sad that I left my friends behind.
Close the
but I
bathroom
was
door.
a relatively extroverted guy, so I'd at least
Sorry.
have a couple of friends before
Sorry.
college. My parents told me to study and get the best marks on my exams, but I preferred to go on Omegle. Remember that thing? I spent hours talking to people. Some were nice, some were weirdos, and some were downright disturbing. There was one that had permanently burned itself into my mind,
Oh?
and I've never been the same since. I logged on, and the first person I saw was a guy, about my age, with long black hair, an Iron Maiden t-shirt, and a blank stare. I tried to start conversation by asking him what his favorite Iron Maiden song was, and
Sorry,
more of those
guys.
types of questions. I eventually was
There
going
you
to
go.
click out of the chat room, but he just put his hands up as if he was telling me to stop, and with the deepest voice ever, he said, "Stop." His voice startled me. How could he have known I was going to click out? "I'll show you my deepest, darkest secret," he continued.
Oh, no.
A grin appeared on his face. I felt uneasy. "I haven't told my parents about my girlfriend, so I'll show you." He got up, went to his closet, and took out a big sleeping bag, filled with what seemed to be a human being. I couldn't move. I was terrified. He opened the bag. There was a girl in there who had a gigantic smile carved into her face and a knife sticking out of the top of her skull. I left the chat room and threw up. I told myself to never, ever touch Omegle again. Since I was new to my town, I didn't know anyone to tell this experience to. So I'm telling it to you. I don't know where that sicko is, but I hope he hasn't hurt anyone else.
Story 2. Okay, I didn't realize it was
In
just
8th grade, some kids in my class started to use an app called Omegle. Even my friend Liam started using it. Liam normally wore a blue hoodie and black slacks and had shady brown hair. I never was that person who used the internet much. I studied a lot, and Liam was always telling me how he catfishes people online with Omegle. This really frustrated me, since he did it in a not-so-legal way, by making money off of it. I tried to visit him sometimes, but he never answered, so I would look through the window, and sometimes he would be dressed up as a short girl with a girl voice modulator. Liam is very much into computing and technology, therefore he probably made a voice modulator. A few days later, he started skipping school, and it confused me since he always came to school at 7:30 in the morning. He never responded to any text messages or calls. However, one day, Liam decided to call me and tell me to go to his house like nothing had happened, as he chuckled on the camera, which kind of creeped me out. So I politely declined, and he started getting mad. He shouted, "I'm gonna kill you and your parents." Then Liam hung up the call. After that, I called the cops and told them where he lived. But when they searched his apartment, they couldn't find him. They found dead bodies of men and even some of my friends. Since that day, I moved far away from Liam. Although, I wonder what could have happened if I listened to him and visited his house.
Oh, that was completely messed up. This one is called Thomas Tells a Lie.
Almost over, and I haven't had any real fun, he complained. You're a fussy little
Sorry.
engine, replied Gordon. We're not here to have fun, we're here to work. This made Thomas cross. I'd rather be fussy and fun than bossy and boring like you, Gordon, he retorted. Just then, the Fat Controller arrived with an important announcement. We're opening a new branch line tomorrow, he told the engines, and I need a volunteer to check the signals along the line to see if they're working properly. Who will volunteer? I will, peeped Thomas. I promise to check very carefully. Thank you, Thomas. Off you go then. And be sure to check every signal, Thomas. Safety is our first concern. Thomas knew that checking signals wasn't a fun job, but something about shiny new tracks and a new branch line always puts Thomas in a good mood. It's better than dealing with bossy Gordon, he said. Along the new branch line, he whistled merrily as he rolled along. Checking signals is really useful. Safety is our first concern, he thought. Each time he saw a signal, he made sure that they are in the right position. He also checked to see if the light was working as well, so it could glow in the night. Thomas was almost finished as he neared the end of the branch line. Then he heard some music playing in the distance. That sounds like a carnival, he thought. That sounds like fun. If I hurry to the carnival now, I could check the rest of the signals later, he told himself. And with that, Thomas made his way.
Oh no.
And they ran
What
to
the frick
greet him.
happened? That was
Soon
weird.
the carnival was over, and Thomas puffed back to Titmuth Sheds. The Fat Controller was there waiting.
Oh no, I
You've
can't
been for a
look!
long time, Thomas, he said. You must have done a very thorough job of checking the new signals. Yes, sir, peeped Thomas. But after the Fat Controller left, Thomas suddenly remembered that he'd forgotten to check the rest of the signals. He had told a lie to the Fat Controller. Thomas gulped at the thought. What if there's trouble? What if one of the unchecked signals didn't work? Then Thomas had an idea. I'll get up very early in the morning and go and check the signals before the grand opening tomorrow. But he didn't think about Percy. The Fat Controller had sent Percy to the new branch line to collect the supplies that were used for the carnival earlier in the day. Dark clouds were beginning to build, and rain was beginning to pour down. Percy began to worry. Don't worry, Percy, said the Fat Controller. Thomas had checked the signals earlier and said they're all working fine. So away you go. So once the load was done, Percy puffed away, feeling confident. Soon the rain fell heavier as Percy puffed along the new track. The signals were green, showing that the line was cleared to pass. Percy was pleased to be right on time. But then...
Oh no, I can't look!
Red signal! He cried and he applied his brakes. But the rain made the rails slippery, and the train was too heavy to move. He hit a curve and was too late. Percy toppled off the track and crashed down the bank with the load behind him. Oh no! Cried Percy. Luckily no one was hurt, but poor Percy was stuck.
I can't look!
The next morning, Duck arrived to rescue Percy. The Fat Controller was there too, and he wasn't happy at all. Thomas told me that all the signals had been checked. Why on earth would this one be broken? Thomas was about to make his way to the new branch line.
I can't look.
Then he saw the Fat Controller walking sternly towards him. Hershey had an accident. He had derailed because of a broken signal on the new branch line. How could such a thing happen, Thomas? Thomas felt terrible. Oh, sir, I'm so sorry, sir, replied Thomas sadly. Then he told the Fat Controller about the carnival, the children, and how he had forgotten to check the other signals after the carnival. I'm sorry, sir. I've broken my promise and told a lie, he said sheepishly. Well, there'll be no fun for quite some time for you, Thomas, scolded the Fat Controller. Once Percy has been looked over at the work, she'll be running our branch line until you've gone and checked every single signal on my entire railway. Twice. Yes, sir. And Thomas was as good as his word. He puffed up every line on the island of Sodor, checking the signals to see if they are working for the other engines. He, of course, checks it twice just to be sure. Gordon liked to tease him for it. Fussy little Thomas, he whistled. Safety is our first concern, Gordon.
Well, that was an interesting video. Anyways, guys, I'll see you all in the next video. This is KBear101 signing out. Adios, everybody.